All right, this is Elizabeth Townsend. This is November 9th, sorry, a little tired. So November 9th, it's November 9th, 2001. This is for Dean Massara's Preparing for Lives in the Law class, and this is Maria Borbon, and we are about to do the interview. She is an LLM student here this year in the first class of the Indigenous culture, Indigenous peoples.
Indigenous peoples
law
policy,
yes. All right. First question. Well, I guess we'll do the first question, and we'll do the second. We'll do it again. Why did you go to law school originally, and was it what you expected when you got there?
I went to law school originally because I was destined to be a single parent, I thought, and I didn't, I wanted to be in a position to support and raise my children. Really, it was financial. I'd had an undergraduate degree in sociology, and I'd worked in collectives. I worked in a free clinic, and I worked in a battered women's shelter. I worked in the public schools in San Francisco, and I worked as a relief house parent in Boulder. And so I had done mostly social service work, which is low pay, and I didn't want to, I wanted to support my kids. I was, in fact, was divorcing upon attending law school. And with my sociology degree, I thought that I didn't want to be a food stamp eligibility worker. I better get back to school, and that was the reason, really, that I decided to come. And I picked that law instead of, I can't add without my calculator. I still can't. And so I knew that, economics and business and that kind of stuff was just not going to be it for me.
How old were your kids when you went back to school?
My children were 5. My oldest started kindergarten when I started law school. My youngest was 18 months old.
So how did you do it?
I was very organized. Every single minute was accounted for. My mother helped me with the kids. She sometimes came to my house to babysit them so I could go to school. And their father took them. Their other grandmother lived in town. She also took them. And they went off to school and daycare, and I came here. And when I got home, I fed them dinner, bathed them, put them to bed, and
hold on.
Started studying.
Come in.
Yeah.
Make
Do
directions.
I have to repeat that?
No, I haven't.
No,
Okay.
it's good. Okay, you back on?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
Oh, excuse me.
So was you in?
One more time, sorry. Yeah, go.
Okay, so was it what you expected when you did you have any expectations of what law school would be like before you got here?
Yes, I thought that, it was going to be very hard. And in fact, I went to the CLEO program. I went to 4 weeks of CLEO or 6 weeks of CLEO. I don't know how long CLEO is anymore. But it was like a pre-law program, and at that time it was ASU. It was at ASU, and I was very fortunate because I went there and then came here. And it was difficult. It was a lot of hard work. And of course, as a minority woman, I always thought we're the last in and the first out, and I was just terrified and fearful the entire time I was here that I would be one of the people that would flunk out, just like most of the minority students that were here then.
How many minority students were in your class?
I don't know how many we started with. We had no blacks graduate in my class. We had one that was in the class, and I don't recall why.
When did you graduate? What year?
In 87. And then we had 6. I don't know if we had, I can't count them all, but I could probably, if I thought real hard, we might have had 6 whole minorities
That's shocking.
graduate.
Don't you think?
At the time. No, I didn't think it was shocking. I thought it was kind of par for the course. I'm very excited now to see just the huge numbers that are here now. But we even had more than, if you talk to lawyers that were 10 years before me or 15 years before me, minority attorneys, they will tell you that it was even more frightening then.
And what about women? Was it?
Women, we had 50%, I think we had 50% women. That was good. And we had, I had mentors that were women with children, women that had children, and they were very helpful and just very helpful and supportive. You could sit around in the basement coffee area and talk to them about, having kids and going to law school.
We've talked to some women who went here when there were only a few women, and sort of their experience, and some very positive, some very negative. Being in a small group of minority students, did you feel isolated at all, or not a bit, or
I did feel there was a certain amount of isolation, and there were some things that happened. I recall a student who I thought was, akin to a white supremacist. I don't know that he was, but I know he attacked me and pushed me into a locker over a comment that I had made. And at that point, I didn't know what to do with him. I wanted to jump, across the dean's desk and tell him, I am not putting up with this, But, and it was an assault. It was certainly a physical assault. And I did nothing. I guess I ranted and raved for about 3 years about it to different students and my kids, because even at graduation, one of my kids said, "Oh, we were going to throw rocks when they called his name." And I recall it was because I had made a comment about the Ohio Supreme Court, I guess, got reversed by United States Supreme Court. It was in a class, a civil procedure class. Because they gave a white daughter to the mother, and she was married to a black man. They gave it to the father, and the Supreme Court overturned that. And we were having a discussion about that, and I guess he didn't like my comments. And so when we were down in the locker room, I remember just this. I was on my knees at the bottom locker trying to fish my books out to go home, and I remember he just bashed me, and was very ugly and hostile. And I think that was the only incident of that nature, and certainly would be unacceptable today.
What did you do once you left school, when you graduated?
I went to be a law clerk for a federal judge in Phoenix, Judge Rosenblatt. I did that for 2 years. I took the bar, and passed, and moved to Tempe with my children. And we went to live in Phoenix while I did that for 2 years.
And for students thinking about clerking, can you give them, besides like what's a good place to be, but sort of specific thoughts about your experiences that?
Clerking?
Mm-hmm.
I just loved it. To this day, I'm almost 50. It truly was the best job I ever had, and probably the best job I'm ever going to have. And because I love research, I love research, and there's a certain amount of, I can't say autonomy. There is autonomy. And the judge, you're making decisions for the judge, really, by the research and the memos that you present. And I hear that, I was talking to my co-clerk, because I still didn't know how I got hired. I wasn't that high in my class. And he said, "Oh, it's because of your medical background." I said, "What medical background?" He said, "Well, you worked in a clinic, and I hate doing Social Security cases, and because it's a lot of medical stuff." And I had reviewed files and stuff when I worked in the free clinic. But so he claims that that's the reason that I was hired, because he wanted to dump all the Social Security cases on somebody. And that was me, and I was very grateful. I was very grateful.
So what was a day like? What was your typical day? Did you have a typical day while
Law
you were
clerk?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. We were in every court hearing and proceeding, every trial. We had to be bailiffs. So we were bailiffs. We had to go and get the witnesses, and I did work also in the courtroom. We basically did lots of research. Were assigned cases, everything. I did huge 700-page contract cases, and huge, Dairymen Association antitrust cases, review of, and most of it was kind of mega law up in Phoenix. I did no criminal work whatsoever, and just boxes and boxes of files you had to review. Sometimes the litigation, which was just boxes of files, and crunch it all down into a memorandum so the judge could issue an order. I was there when English only, was being litigated in Phoenix, and also I was there when, what is that guy's name? Charles Keating came to court with 100 lawyers in the courtroom that I was at. And that was before he got kicked out of the Phoenician in Phoenix and before he was indicted and arrested and all of that. But I guess they had declared some kind of bankruptcy after the savings and loan, and the issue was he had paid, I don't know, it was $4 million or $1 million to these 100 attorneys, and the estate wanted it back. The bankruptcy estate wanted it back, and there were 100 attorneys he came to court with.
What was that like?
I was just so impressed that someone could walk into court with all of these lawyers, and a lot of them gave the money back. You know, some of them were just, no, we don't have anything to do with this. They gave the money back, and a lot of them were, I guess, fighting to keep the money that he had given them.
Where did they all stand or sit? I mean, how can you have 100?
I don't know that there were 100. I'm exaggerating.
Uh-huh.
There were many lawyers that he came with, and actually the best person I ever saw in federal court was the woman who represented him in that proceeding from Houston. This woman talked probably for 3 hours without stopping. She was very articulate and very just motivated. Boxes of papers came in, you know, to the courtroom. I don't know if it was just for show or what was going on, but it was kind of fun to watch. It was a lot of interesting things happen in federal court, and for me that's why it was very exciting, because it was always something different. You're never bored. You know, there were always different issues to research and write about, and lots of different kinds of things to read, which it was just thrilling for me.
I'm going to ask one more question and we'll move on, because
Okay.
when you talked about the big boxes of litigation stuff and you have to make it into a memo, does someone help you figure out how to do that, or did you on your own figure out how to sort of sift through all this material and figure out what was there?
Well, they wrote briefs, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the two parties write briefs, and so that's helpful. I don't think there was that kind of assistance, really. They were usually in civil litigation motions for summary judgment, and so you did all of the research. I don't know that there was help in that sense. I did go a week early for free to learn how to do the word processing, because I was nervous about that. So he let me come in early so I could learn that and practice in my little office, because they did require you to produce, and so those memorandum had to get out, and it was a tremendous amount of work, prisoner cases and just everything.
And what about for those who have kids and they're thinking about doing a clerkship? Is that possible? I mean, you did it, but how hard is it to have young kids and be doing a clerkship?
I don't think it's hard at all. Now there's more and more people. In fact, there's more women now, and men also, who are doing permanent clerkships. That is their job. They're not leaving. My co-clerk was the permanent other law clerk, so there were never any other openings for his position. And I know several women that is their permanent job. And for me, and I don't know if it's because I don't have microchips in my brain, I always had to bring work home. But it was a tremendous amount of work, and some of it I never took antitrust when I was here, and so some of the stuff you just kind of had to learn by doing the research and reading the briefs or the motions that were filed. And so that made it, an extraordinary amount of work. But I've never been afraid of work, and I usually waited until the kids went to bed anyways. It wasn't like it was a huge interference.
Mm-hmm. What did you do after that?
I went to work here in Tucson in a insurance defense firm. I did that for a year. I wanted to live in Tucson. I suppose I could have stayed in Phoenix and gotten a job, but I wanted to come back. The kids were still young, and their cousins and their family were here, and so I did insurance defense.
And after that?
I was a federal public defender for 7 years, and I worked in federal court doing trials and litigation, and argued in the Ninth Circuit and wrote Ninth Circuit briefs and went to jails and visited clients pretty much everywhere. I've been in many prison facilities, both in the state, the county, juvenile, and federal court is now, the workload was just hideous because they do immigration violations, and so with everybody trying to cross the border, it's not uncommon now that they're getting 500,000 people a day that they can detain or arrest, and I don't know how many of those actually came to court. I could never figure out the ones that were actually prosecuted, but we were the ones that were defending them. So we went initially, we just drive down the road to Wilmot Prison, the federal one, in Tucson, and then the juvenile federal offenders were housed at Pima County Juvenile Court Center, and because of the increase, it just got out of control, and we were driving to Florence to see both juveniles and clients in a private prison. So it was an hour-and-a-half drive, hour-and-a-half back, and then you didn't want to make that trip every day, so you had to take lots of files with you, and you'd spend the whole day a whole day in jail, prison. And we did that a lot. That was a huge function of the job. And I don't know that it's a huge function of the job. I think it is also in the county public defender, the state public defender. I think in any public defender or any defense job, where you're defending the accused and they're in prison and they don't get out on bail, which many immigrants don't. In fact, probably I bet 99% don't. You have to go see them in jail.
And we've talked to a bunch of people, and not bunch, but a couple of people on different sort of dealing with clients in prison. And do you think that's different than dealing with, how is it different dealing with clients? As a young attorney, young lawyer, getting out.
They're very unhappy. They're in prison, and sometimes they want to know why they're not out and what have you done or not done. Somehow they try to make you the person who decides whether or not they get out. And as a criminal defense attorney, and in federal court, I think I've read that 97% of all trials result in conviction. They have a 97% conviction rate. And so a lot of the work involves, getting them to accept plea offers, because the alternative is just horrendous in terms of the amount of time. And, the joke always was, if your client gets out, it's harder to convince them to go back in after a plea, but if they're still in there, it's easier to get them to take the plea. But it was very heart-wrenching, because most of my clients and most of the clients in the federal system are immigrants, Mexican citizens, and for all of the, I worked in the drug war, essentially, a ton of cocaine case at the border, a ton of methamphetamine case. It was a huge amount of drugs involved, and sometimes it was, most of the time it was just a lot of re-entries. Many people's families are in the United States, and so even though they're deported, they just turn around and come back and get back in as quick as they can to be with their families. And the Mexican citizens who were not in the United States, who came to try to look for work and were apprehended, many of the same that are dying in the desert, we had to deal with a lot of their families, because, while this guy's incarcerated, their family is starving. And so that is, I had a client in tears once, crying, because he said, while I'm here, I'm going to eat well. I'm never going to be hot in the summer. I'm never going to be cold in the winter, but my family will starve to death. And so that was the heart-wrenching part of the job. Well, I thought, if I have to stand here and listen to another grown Mexican man cry, I'm just going to slit my wrist. Of course you're not going to. But that's how it was sometimes. It was like, what is wrong with this picture? Because most of my clients, but for a few, you'd have at your dining room table. Very hardworking, very motivated, very, in love with their children.
So what do you do? I mean,
You plead them and get as little time as you can and beg and kick and scream, and if there's any kind of defense, you go for it. I mean, anything that will free them, or you know, you make attempts to change the law or advance the law so it's not so hard on the group as a whole, you know, because it's...
what about their families? Did you ever
Devastating.
feel responsible for their families? Or
I tried not to feel responsible for the families, and you have to understand, I've worked in collectives, I'm like a bleeding heart kind of person, so, you know, people could tell me, and I was a sap, you know, you could tell me anything, and even in private practice, you know, and I don't know that that's good to be as emotionally involved. I think you're supposed to separate yourself from your work, and I've heard that from everybody, but I don't know how you can. This is like human rights, you know, human dignity, human, you know, food, shelter, all of those things that we care about. It's hard, very hard.
That'd be very hard. How did you separate? We talked about other people too who dealt in different hard areas.
Well, a lot
When you
of
went
the-
home, how did you not just cry every night about people's problems? Do
I
you?
didn't cry every night, and you know, you get a lot of support from talking to other attorneys, other people. I don't know how you didn't cry every day. A lot of people had the attitude, and I figured it out because I used to hear these things. Oh, come on, Maria, it's just job security. You know, what are you worrying about? It's job security. And I think that was the defense that they used to not be emotionally involved. This is my job. I have to go and do this job. And if I get emotionally involved, I'm going to be crazy, or I'm not going to be as effective, or I don't know what the dangers of that professionally. I know personally there's dangers involved. I think you just separate yourself from it. Some people were very good at it. I know at a lot of the seminars, the defense seminars by the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and also there's a state one, I forget what it's called anymore, Arizona Attorneys for Criminal Justice, and there's a federal bar association. I would go to the seminars and they would talk about defending the Constitution all the time, you know, because people would say, well, how can you represent junkies, muggers, thieves, murderers, you know, and they would always talk about defending the Constitution, and that just never felt right with me. I always felt like I was defending the person sitting at the defense table and not defending the Constitution. But I think if I was defending the Constitution, it might have been easier.
We've asked this of a lot of people of all different corporate lawyers, everything, all times. Were you ever scared of clients?
Scared of clients, I was not scared of clients, scared of the situation that the clients presented, but I can't say I was afraid of clients. You mean,
What do you mean?
like
Personally,
violence?
like scared, like you personally, yeah, violence, or
That someone
I don't know,
was going
somebody,
to hurt me?
somehow you were personally, like, I don't know.
There was
had,
an
yeah.
affront or an issue that
Or
came
they just
up.
seemed scary, or they sort of threatened you, or you didn't feel safe, that somehow.
I had clients offer me money, you know, and that was pretty scary. I didn't know if, you know, I know of lawyers whose computers have been snatched out of their office recently in the last couple of years, a defense attorney, and so when they were offering money, I didn't know what the motivation was. Of course, you can't take money from your clients when you're a public defender, but, you know, that was kind of scary. But I never felt like there would be an attack. As a woman, you know, women public defenders, I think, often get proposals of marriage and love letters and that kind of stuff, and we all got those, and we just put them away, thank you cards, you know, or something, thank you cards. That didn't bother me. But the other stuff was, you know, I think it's par for the course, just because I don't know what the problem was, but you get that kind of stuff when you're a woman. I don't think the men so much. They weren't lucky enough.
What did you do after?
I became a private attorney. I took about 8 or 9 months off and sat in front of my fireplace in the winter, and did yoga and meditated, and then opened up a private practice in 1998.
But can we talk a little bit more about the transition? A lot of people have talked to, what made you decide to leave, and was it a hard 8 months or a good 8 months? Was it a planned 8 months?
It was a very good 8 months. It was a very good 8 months. It was just, I had to reorganize my thoughts and just I just taking time off. I'd worked all my life, and I just felt like I deserved this, and I had retirement money, and I opened up an office and decided I'd work for myself, by myself, and I did all my own work processing. I was my own secretary, my own receptionist, my own attorney. I did everything, and it worked very well, actually, because I was always afraid. I'm so cheap. Ask anybody I know. I have to save money, and people often ask me how can you live, and I just don't spend money. I know George Bush wants us to spend money, but he's not getting none of mine. And I just can't. I could not be in a position, I guess, to be, I felt like I was responsible for my kids, responsible for myself, I'm responsible for all these costs. I didn't want to be responsible for employee costs associated with having an employee. I could have had many employees, but I just didn't. I did hire legal assistants that did very well, very good work just when I needed something done, and they would come in and organize my office and prepare some kind of documents that I could edit and stuff. But other than that, I did it all by myself, and it was great. I loved it. I was in a building with 3 other attorneys, and so you could ask them or their assistants or something. Just a very supportive place for being a sole practitioner.
What did you do as a sole practitioner?
I did criminal defense, DUIs. I worked a contract out of Marana, out of Oro Valley. I did some work for the Yaqui tribe doing Indian Child Welfare Act cases. I did family law, a lot of divorces, and a lot of criminal defense. I had some federal court work, not much. A lot of divorces, 5 people I was supposed to divorce, reconcile. What am I doing wrong? I'm supposed to be divorcing, and you're reconciling. I don't know if I terrorized them into reconciling or what, but I had a lot of
We have to explain more about that.
Well, see,
people will want to know.
Well, I had working people kind of clients, and this is a minimum wage town still, so let's be realistic. They don't have $10,000 to give anybody to help them with a divorce as a retainer or otherwise. And so there were a few of us still doing them for real cheap, almost free, not free quite, but just about. And so I really have a background of alternative dispute resolution, even coming into law school. And I did alternative dispute resolution presentation, I think, at the State Bar when I was here. That's what I was interested in. And in the Indigenous program, I like, that there's peacemaking and mediation. And so I'm big on negotiating and mediating. I just think it's too expensive to litigate. I think it's almost criminal what they do to children in divorce court, because of the parties either, just refuse to disagree. And I know a lot of it is divorce-itis, and I know that, sometimes they calm down. And so I didn't have clients that had thousands of dollars to litigate anything, really. Unless I was going to stand there and do it for free, you really could not agree to do that because the costs were unsurmountable unless you were willing to put up all of your money, which I did for a while, and then decided that wasn't going to work. So the alternative was to resolve this, even if not amicably, at least, put something on paper that you think you can work with. And I don't care if you sneer at each other when you drop off the kids or pick them up, but at least you resolve it so that, you have the kids can go forward and you can go forward, and so I would talk about things like that, and then they would call me and tell me they've reconciled. I said, I don't believe I had 5 reconciled. 1 I actually divorced, and then they got back together, but the other 4 actually hooked up and said, no, we're dismissing the petition we're back together. I said, okay, whatever you want, and I'd have to meet with them and explain, it's dismissed. That means you have to refile if you're going to go forward and make sure that's what you want to do. And they would just reconcile. And I don't know if I had anything to do with that, or if the circumstances of their case had anything to do with that. I just thought it was a little odd, as I thought I was supposed to be divorcing them.
For those who are interested, I want to make sure we're getting close on time. Okay, we'll do a little bit more in solo practice, and we'll do a little bit on legal, your coming back and your thoughts about legal education. But I know there are a lot who are interested in solo practicing and sort of clients that aren't the super huge clients, and sort of the practicality of doing what you are doing.
Yeah.
And maybe you could talk a little bit more about
solo practitioner is very, very good if you like autonomy and independence and doing your own work. And you can pick up a number of different things. You don't just have to, I didn't specialize in anything. I'm not certified to say I'm specialized in anything, but I did have a working, domestic practice, family law practice, and you can get different contracts from different agencies. I think the big thing is it's unfortunate, but it's all about money. That's one of the reasons why I was dumping the practice anyways, because it was not cost effective. Because I'm a bleeding heart, people can tell you any sob story, and you hear somebody cry, and that's it. All right, come on in. And they would give you a few dollars here and a few dollars there, but the expenses are overwhelming. I mean, it's very difficult, when you go out there and you hear about all these people making money and making a living. I don't even feel like I was making a living. I qualified for earned income credit, I think 2 years in a row that I was in practice, and my tax lady laughed at me. She said, Maria, do you know how poor you have to be to qualify for earned income credit? Yes, I do. And I think, unfortunately, the money is the issue, being able to get your bills paid, the overhead expenses, the building, the space, the whatever your costs are. You can find used furniture anywhere, and you can lease office space fairly reasonably, but you still have to, pay the costs at the office and then hopefully have enough to bring home. And so in this minimum wage town, it's really hard to do that. Because I didn't have big giant clients. I mean, I maybe they know where to get them, maybe they are able to get clients, but that have enough income where you can just say, it's a $20,000 retainer with a straight face. And there are people doing that, and I just admire them greatly for being able to do that. For me, the stress associated with that, I guess, is just overwhelming. Because then, if you're going to grab $20,000 from somebody, then you have all of these employees or somebody that's an assistant to do some of the work. And I just think that it's you have to be able to keep yourself afloat, or you can't you can't represent anybody.
Did you do flat fee or did you do hourly?
I did flat fee, and I did some people hourly. Right now I still do, I have 5 wills I'm supposed to be doing over the holidays, because I did start doing a little bit of probate, and my plumber, I told, he has to stand in line. My cousin called yesterday. I said, you're 5 wills behind everybody. But I did a flat fee for, mostly flat fee. The hourly stuff, I was very diligent in the beginning. I prepared my own sheet, just like the big firms, only I tailored it for my uses of, trying to keep track of billable hours. But I never had clients that had that kind of money, and so I just said a flat fee. It's going to take me X amount of time to do all of this, counting my court time, going downtown, practice interviews, and they had unlimited access, my clients did. Once I got home, it wasn't like that, but at the office, they called whenever they wanted. Oh, yeah. And so I would talk to them. I dropped everything, and I didn't bill them. And I think they need that, too. I think they need that, because the alternative is you call your attorney, and you're afraid to call your attorney because you're going to get a bill for $185 or $225, and I've heard that from so many people that I just think that's unconscionable, but I still think that that's the reality. You have to get paid for the work that you do, and work very hard at not feeling guilty about getting paid for the work that you do.
Did you ask for the flat fee in advance, or did they?
I asked for the flat fee in advance, and I think I got it 3 times in 3 years. And everybody usually made payments, and people still owe me probably, I think, $8,000 or $10,000. And every now and then I write a nice letter, or I call somebody, and every now and then somebody brings me money still. And I, wouldn't think of taking them to court and getting judgments, even though I know that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go to court and get judgments and put a lien on their house and all of these other things to be able to collect. But somehow I can't do that. I should not be in private practice because I could not make enough money. I have a history of people work and, a whole no hierarchical systems and all of that, and I made $600 a month before I came to law school, working at the free clinic and a battered women's shelter, and so all of that, corporate kind of, and billable hours and all of that maintenance, I'm not the person to ask because you'll be a pauper.
That leads us to why you're here. You're back
Why
at school.
Why am I here?
It's tell this because this is for this year, but somebody may be watching it years down the road and not know what you're talking about. So tell them a little bit about what it is. And
okay. I, in February of this year, I think, or January this year, I closed down my practice and moved at home. I decided I can do this out of my house. I have a huge office in my house, bigger than the one I was paying rent to. And, and it's very nicely set up, and it's a pleasant environment, and I said I can do this out of my house. I don't have to pay, I forget what I was paying. It was about $1,200 a month, $1,300 a month, maybe more costs, just the basic office, phone, that kind of stuff, fax. And so in December of 2000, I moved my office home, and I told the guy I was renting with I'm leaving. He said, oh great, 2 guys want to move in, and so I was worked out. I mean, just perfect. And I moved my office home and started working out of my house, and it actually worked very well. And then in January or February I saw an article in the Writ about this Indigenous Law and Policy program, and I said, at the U of A, and I'm reading, and I was just excited because I think a year ago when I was in private practice, or 2 years ago, I started hitting the internet and looking for LLM programs a lot around the country, and there was
why?
Because I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to teach. And I figured I'd have to go back to school. And so I was looking at LLM programs, and I didn't really see anything. A lot of them are in tax, and a lot of them are in that kind of stuff that I had no interest in doing. And so when I saw this one, I was just thrilled. I think I ran right over here, called Jim, who's director of the program, and I told him I was very interested, and yes, I would apply. And in 2 weeks I applied. I literally just cranked out my application, ran and got my transcripts, just did everything that needed to be done, and submitted a personal statement. And but I hadn't heard, when did I hear I was actually accepted? I think in April. So in the meantime, I was looking for work. I've always not wanted to live in Tucson. So I was trying to find a job elsewhere, and I applied for jobs. I applied for a job in Palau, working as legislative counsel for the country of Palau. And I interviewed in San Francisco for that. Well, I didn't get that, and that one I really wanted to go. That was then, and now I don't think I'd want to be stuck in Palau in these times, just because I don't know what's going on over there. I want to be at home. If you're going to blow up the Twin Towers, I want to be safe and in my house. Thank you for now. There's a sense of security about being home. And I applied a couple of other places, and there were jobs. I always search EmployerNet if your students are looking for jobs. They have a job of the day, and they have many exciting jobs. They're not, some of them are public interest. They're not just corporate. I have to, work, bill 2,400 hours in a big firm. And so I was looking to move, and I was still looking for work, I think, up until the time school started. I went ahead and applied for financial aid. I sold a rental, I think. I had a rental here that I lived in when I was in law school before, and I sold it to help, pay off all the debt I incurred while I was in private practice, and so I wouldn't have that while I came here.
And?
I love it. I love this program. I like doing research. I like the atmosphere. I like the environment. I like the classes. We just didn't have that in 1987. I suppose I could have taken international law. I don't remember why I didn't, but there was a reason. I'm sure there was a conflict with a bar course I had to have, because when I was here, it was bar. I had 2 kids, and that was the only thing I was going to do, was get through here, take bar courses, and pass the bar, and that's what I did. But now I don't have that kind of pressure. My kids are older; they're 22 and 18 now, and so I'm not as responsible for them as I was then, and they're way more independent now. And so I liked law school when I was here the last time, and I still like law school. I was probably one of the few that didn't have a lot of complaints about being in school, because I really liked it.
And what are your thoughts about your being out and then being back, in terms of what the school does, in terms of preparing people, or the classes, and
I don't know what you mean by that question.
Well, there's a lot of people talking about what legal education should be, like what you should be learning in classes. Should you be doing sometimes students think that sort of the more fluffy classes, what they see as fluffy, like a globalization class, is not as worthwhile as a property class, which, I have to say I totally disagree with, but sort of what your thoughts are about being a student after having practiced, in terms of explaining to other students the value or not value of the courses they're taking.
Well, I took, when I was here, I took mostly bar courses. There were few fluff. I did an internship at Legal Aid. I did an internship at Legal Aid, and that was useful, because you actually worked one-on-one with clients, and you interacted with them, and I forget what that was. That was interviewing skills. Which was good to know, how to interview people and how to get information out of them. I'd already had that experience, because I was 32 when I started law school the first time. But I took what else did I take? I don't know what else that was very useful. Oh, I did a 38E, and I think that's very useful. When I was a federal defender, in fact, I worked with many students from the school. I let them do trials. I let them help me write Ninth Circuit briefs, and they all did very good work. I took them out to the jails, and they were thrilled. I won a trial with a student out of this school. My client was just delighted, and I've won Ninth Circuit arguments from the work of students in this school, doing immigration work, and I've mentored many students. Just the other day I did a mock interview for someone that was going to interview with the Department of Justice. That was this week, and what was the question?
What about like the more culturally based classes? Do you think they're important? The classes that aren't the black letter law, that teach you about like the preservation and the Hershey's class. Do you think that that sort of stuff is important for students to have?
I think it's very important if you're leaning that way anyways. If you're not leaning that way, you're not going to be in the class. I think that everybody should take advantage of the variety of classes that there are now. But some students are never going to go there, and who am I to tell them that they have to or that they should? They're not doing it. for a number of reasons. I can't say they don't care.
Mhm.
I think it would be in everybody's interest to do it, but if they don't, I mean,
Right.
but as long as it's here, I would seize the opportunity to take any of it. They didn't have, they had 38E, but the clinics now I think are very useful. I've heard good things. In fact, a couple of the students that I had in the Federal Defender's Office came right out of the immigration clinic from the school, and they did excellent work and were very committed, and I'm sure they're out doing good work somewhere as we speak.
Do you have questions? Any thoughts?
Mm-mm.
We're running out of time.
Okay.
We're going to ask our last question.
And?
Is a happy moment practicing law?
Not guilty, not guilty from the jury is the happiest words you can ever think of, not guilty. And also getting back a winning oral argument or a winning decision, favorable decision from the Court of Appeals is excellent. And little thank you cards from your clients are very happy moments. Happy moments, yeah.
Well, thank you.
Success.
This was great. Thank you so much.
Well, good.